And now, Jalen and Jacoby on ESPN Radio.
When I pop the trunk, head to death. Y'all pop the trunk, I pop the hood.
Now act stupid, I'll pop the trunk. Now give me your boom, boom.
He is Jalen Rose. What up, now?
I'm David Jacoby.
And on the cool check-in. Center stage on the mic.
And we're putting it on wax. It's the new style.
We're Jalen and Jacoby. What do we do?
We give the people what they want.
I want to take everybody behind the curtain.
Let's do it.
We have some special guests coming up. Former Grantland colleague of mine, esteemed colleague of ours. And in order to fit them, we had to go to the Get Up studio. So we are now in a fancy, multi-million-dollar complex.
Well, they know we sold out.
There's crew in the room right now. But we're always, no matter what room, no matter what guest, no matter what time, we're going to record some exclusive content for our podcast.
I just like that Jackie Mack called you out on not wearing a tie. She was like, it looks good on the
logo.
On the logo, but I've been watching the show the last few years, and you ain't been wearing that.
The weather's starting to turn here in New York City. You'll be seeing more ties on me in fall and the winter. Because really what it is like, I'm not going to out casual Jalen Rose.
Thank you.
You know, you can't out casual Jalen Rose.
David Stern kind of alluded to that when he saw me last night.
What do you say? What the heck are you wearing, Jalen?
Well, because they had on normal, like, adult.
So I've got a follow-up question here.
Shirt and collared shirt.
Jalen Rose, when you see David Stern, I have options for you. Grown man, white guy handshake, pound and a bro hug, or do you do a hand slap and then full hug? Do you go straight to the full hug? Or do you guys have your own intricate Cavs-style handshake?
We have our own intricate go to the straight hug, because I love David Stern.
Go to the straight hug?
Like where the game is now, and Adam Silver is doing a terrific job as commissioner, I saw the growth of the game happen under David Stern.
Okay, so when you see him, one thing, if you're going to go straight for the full hug, you have to open your arms when you're at a distance to communicate to him that you're going to go for the full hug, right?
Well, no.
You're cool enough that you don't think about these things. That's the difference between me and you.
And plus, you can't underestimate the fact that I've seen him so many times over the last 20 years. I played 13, and I've been retired 12.
You've got a routine.
Yes. Yes.
I just love the idea. I love the idea that the first time you shook his hand, you were wearing that suit.
I did. He always remembers that. He calls me the best dressed person on draft day.
He doesn't mean that. He doesn't mean that.
Also,
sometimes if you wear something crazy, people are like, I like that. They don't mean I like that. They mean I noticed that.
I always do the corny joke about trying to get some of my fine money back.
Oh, how much total fine money do you have in your career?
I would say probably $150,000.
What did you get fined for? Text and stuff, or do you get fined for
technical files,
ejections?
And also,
I would have taken the over on that.
And also, like, not only do other sports than basketball and football evade having salary caps, their fines and punishments aren't the same. Like in baseball, you could throw a ball 80 miles an hour at somebody, they fine you $75. But in basketball,
they wouldn't even take you out of the game.
Correct. In basketball, a tech is $2,500.
That's a lot of money. That's after taxes. When
you watching your favorite team play,
that's about $4,000.
$4,000
of your salary.
Yeah.
Just because the ref made a bad call.
Right. Or you just upset and emotional playing the game you love.
We're going to do a regional or cultural segment on the television show tomorrow. So please call 985-80-JALEN. Leave us your regional or cultural questions. Right now, we're taking all callers like this one.
Shout out, Reg. My name's Nima. I'm a Iranian, Danish-born American calling from Seattle, Washington. I got two questions for y'all. First of all, I got a colorful gang of friends. Now, when I go hiking with people that look more like Jalen, I notice that they don't really like being in the woods or swimming too much. Is the woods cultural or regional in swimming? My second question, boss move or soft move? Doing handshakes with your boys in your 30s plus. I hooped in high school, still got the homies, we still got the handshakes. I feel like I'm on the fence with this one. Just wanted to get you guys' take on it. hockey, passion
This
on
is
sex.
one of my favorite cultural regionals we've ever gotten. Jalen Rose, I have my own answer. I want to hear yours. Are the Woods cultural or regional?
Cultural.
Regional.
No doubt about
They're
it.
regional by nature. Like you're either in the woods or you're not, based on the geography of where you are.
No! The reason it's cultural is regardless to where I am, I ain't trying to be in the woods, sir. What are you
That's because
saying?
you grew up in Detroit.
I don't. Correct! And have you looked at the per capita of who lives in the city of Detroit?
Yeah, I'm familiar.
Okay.
However, there are a lot of people that look like you that enjoy the outdoors, that love hiking,
love
that love
the-
the woods, that live in the woods. They'll build you a log cabin in like 3 days.
I
Chop down
don't
trees
want
with an axe.
to be amongst the wild animals on this earth. I don't want to run into a deer. I don't want to run into a bear. I don't want to do that. Not a rabbit, not anything.
Trey Wingo put up a picture, I think it was Twitter, of a bear in his backyard. And I think I saw Sage Steele did the same thing. And I'm thinking to myself, like, I'm not moving to Connecticut.
I'm moving.
I'm not moving to Connecticut. I mean, there's
I'm
a
good.
number for everything, but I don't want bears in my backyard. I got little kids. To a bear, one of my twins is like a chicken nugget. It looks delicious.
Name me some of the things that are out in the wild.
Foxes.
Foxes,
Snakes,
scared of them, scared of them,
woodchucks,
scared of them,
beavers,
scared of them,
birds.
not scared of them.
Not scared of birds. Yeah, my wife is scared of birds. It's weird.
She probably saw that Birds movie back in the day.
I got so much wildlife
And/or
in my
read the
house right
book.
now, Jalen. It's really bothering me. I brought it up like 4 times today already. I'm really, really troubled by
What? What's happening now?
mice, man. Mice.
I tried to tell you, I love New York City like the next man.
Don't tell people
But
where you live.
when you are here,
Don't tell people where you
I'm
live.
not. When you are here, whether you live in a high rent district or not, you will be exposed to mice or rats. It's going to happen.
Kill them all. I'll have the exterminator move in the house. I'll have him move. He can sleep on the couch downstairs. He can move in the house. I will move him into my home and just be like, look, if I see a mouse, you're out the house.
Here's a question.
Okay?
Are you actually scared of rats?
No.
See, I am.
Yes, they don't bother me. Like my
They
wife.
bother me.
My wife is terrified of mice, and to me, I look at them like just large bugs. Like, what are they going to do? Bite me? Like, what's the worst that can happen?
So this is almost like a scary movie. I know this. I have the visual in my head. There's a loud sound downstairs, and I'm gonna run out of the house and scream, "Help!" Ah! And you can be like, "Let's get the flashlight and investigate."
Let's check it out. See what
Right? This is the same exact thing with rats. Okay, you're gonna try to figure out a way to trap the rat, try to kill the rat, and try to do it on your own if you have to. I ain't doing that.
Jalen, he had a second question. He plays basketball. Shout out to the homies, he said.
Shout out.
And they've got custom handshakes. I believe he's in his late 30s, I believe he said.
Yep.
Custom handshakes in your late 30s, soft move or boss move?
I'm all about solidarity. Boss move.
I have a qualifier on this, as you would say quantifier. My qualifier on this is, everyone that listens to the pod knows. Everyone listens to the pod knows. I've tried, we've been hanging out. I've been like, Jalen, I love you. There's something I need to tell
Go
you.
live on that one.
Quantifier is not what you think it means, dog. Quantifier means like you can count them. Qualifier is like you're putting an asterisk on it. Again, I promise you, Jalen will use quantifier wrong in the next 3 podcasts. But moving on. I love you. I'm just trying to make you better, dog. I'm not trying to clown you, I'm trying to make you better. Qualifier is this. It can't be too long. The custom handshake is you only 2 moves. Like you can't be standing there for 10 seconds like LeBron in the Cavs.
Well, it's not a handshake when it's only 2 moves. You need.
It's got to be quick 2 moves.
You need 3.
I have basically one friend I have a custom handshake for. It's very simple. It's very simple. Very simple.
Front hand, back hand.
Yeah, front hand, back hand handshake. Exactly. That's it. Just simple. You know what I mean? Just like that. That's all it is.
Ricky always wanted to play baseball in the majors. He was playing catch before he could walk, practically lived in the batting cages. He was behind home plate more than he was home. And one day, after all that hard work, he found himself walking into a Major League Baseball stadium. After buying a ticket at the front gate, a nosebleed seat obscured by a pole, but he was in there. No, Ricky never did play in the big leagues, but he did switch his car insurance to Geico, proud partner of Major League Baseball, which saved him a lot. So, all in all, things were good.
Jalen Rose, we have some special guests today.
We have company.
We do. We have a big studio because we to fit
I know,
the personalities of Jackie McMullen and Rafe Bartholomew, along with Dan Flores, the authors of the book Basketball, A Love Story. Rafe, tell us a little bit about the project.
All right, so the book Basketball, A Love Story, and the film Basketball, A Love Story, which is going to be on here, ESPN, actually some of it has already played, start from this same group of 165 interviews that Dan Flores set up, arranged, conducted a lot of them with NBA legends, players, coaches, execs, media, all about the history of the game and the love of the game. Every interview starts with, how did you fall in love with this game of basketball? So Jackie and I, and Dan, using those interviews, put together an oral history book, basically trying to tell the story of the game and the big dynasties and everything that matters to basketball fans and people who love the sport. And we already had to apologize once to Jalen Rose that he isn't in it.
No control over who was chosen.
It's all good.
No control over who was chosen.
Well,
I have a feeling it's going to be a repetitive thing for us.
Rightly so. Look, I grew up idolizing these guys.
There's no need to idolize Jeff. Jackie, in the hundreds of hours of interviews, what anecdotes about Michael Jordan surprised you?
Well, one of the ones I love the best is actually at the end of his career, believe it or not. So he's playing with Washington, and he and Doug Collins, the band is back together, and he has a long streak of consecutive games. I forget how many. Rafe, you're my fact checker.
Years, I mean, decades,
years
but the better part of a decade.
Right, double figures in games. So they're getting smoked in a game, and Doug's like, all right, this game's over, and doesn't really realize what's going on, takes Jordan out, so the streak ends. And Jordan goes to him the next day and says, so, do you think I can play anymore? And Doug Collins is like, well, of course I think you can play. And he goes, okay, I'm just checking. So the next game he says, you don't take me out till I tell you, okay? I'll give you. So he starts playing, starts going bonkers, scores 51 points. And Doug's like, look at him, he goes, no, not coming out, not coming out. And then the next game scores 40-something points. And to me, that's just the essence of Michael Jordan at the very, very end of his career. But that competitiveness in all the athletes I've ever covered, he still remains, to me, the most competitive, with Kobe a close second.
I agree, and unfortunately for me, I got a chance to play against Michael as a member of the Bulls and of the Wizards. And the fascinating thing now, in the era of resting healthy players, he actually played all 82 games as a 40-year-old playing in Washington. People underestimate that fact. But Isaiah Thomas, and I'm a fellow Detroiter, I'm from Detroit, says you can't tell the Michael Jordan story without talking about the story of the Bad Boys. What do you think about that?
I understand where Isaiah's coming from, and it's duly noted in the book. And what Isaiah's beef is, and he talks about it in the book, is that everybody wants to go from the 80s Celtics right to the Bulls, the 90s Bulls. And there's those 2 years where not only did the Pistons win the championship, they should, as you know, they should have gone to the finals in '87.
Right.
But we won't.
Burn still the ball underneath the DJ.
We're not going to bring that up in front of Isaiah.
There's a full chapter in the book about that.
There
if I
is.
remember correctly.
There is. And so I do understand. What I liked about Isaiah, and I hadn't really thought about it, if I'm honest, and I probably should have because I was immersed in that. I covered those teams, was the idea of the Detroit being this small market, champion slayers. And, I covered all those Celtics, Pistons games and the Pistons Lakers. And he's right. They beat some of the greatest teams in the history of the sport. And he's also right that they get snuck through the cracks. But part of that is because they were so darn unlikable.
Correct.
Bad
boys.
Bad boys, and they reveled in that. I tell you a quick story about Dennis Rodman, one of the bad boys. Orlando, 1991, he's an all-star. It's the day before, and they are announcing who's going to play in the game the next day. They boo Rodman. He's looking at me, tears in his eyes. Why are they booing me? He's wearing jeans and sneakers. He's dressed like you then, Jacoby. He was just a kid, a regular kid, And somewhere along the way, he decided, if I can't beat the bad boy thing, I'm going to embrace it. Oh. And that's when he became the Dennis Rodman everybody else knows
Piercings,
today.
tats, blonde hair.
He used to just be a kid from Oklahoma.
Yes, he was.
That wanted to play ball.
Let me ask you, Jalen, what is it about guys who from Detroit played in Detroit that tend to have a little more of an edge with Michael Jordan than everyone else? Because one of the other great stories from the book, early in Jordan's career, George the Iceman Gervin, a Detroit native, gets traded to the Bulls. And that's the year that Jordan spent most of the year out with his foot injured. But Gervin tells a story about how, they just didn't get along because the Bulls got rid of Rod Higgins, who was one of Jordan's best friends at the time, in order to make that trade. And he basically ends up calling Michael Jordan a punk on camera in the book. Right. So, where's that?
You alluded to it, Jack. It's a competitive jealousy. Like, Detroit is a blue-collar town, and so we see the glamour of Los Angeles and everybody enamored with Hollywood and the great dynasties that the Celtics have. Right. So everybody's looking like, what about us? So we're one of the only places, along with Indiana, that still will boo Michael Jordan. Like, we weren't allowed to rock his shoes, not that we could afford them, but, we didn't wear his shoes because the rivalry was that intense against a great player like Michael Jordan.
So, Rafe, when reading this book, there was one thing that stuck out to me, and I was like, I need to talk to them about this. And it is an anecdote that Ahmad Rashad tells about what Michael Jordan said about the current crop of players. Please explain, Mr. Bartholomew.
Well, Ahmad Rashad is talking, he tells a lot, because the book does not get Michael Jordan in his own words, but everyone.
Ahmad's the next
right. Exactly. If you don't know, and you're watching Ahmad Rashad,
the wingman extraordinaire, as well as a great NFL player and all this other stuff. But so he's telling a story about one time he's next to Michael, and people are asking him, "Hey, who's really better? Kobe or LeBron? You or LeBron?" And he's like, or who's better, Kobe or LeBron? He's like, the best guy right now, I think it is Kevin Durant. Now,
Kevin Durant. Michael Jordan.
Now. The difference here is these interviews are a couple of years old. That interview with Ahmad Rashad, I believe, would have been done before 2016, when LeBron really does solidify that legacy by beating the Warriors.
Right. But you could still argue that Durant's kind of on a pretty good string himself here.
Sure.
Right?
No doubt.
Sure.
And Durant's the kind of player that Jordan would appreciate, right?
Yes.
Wiry, athletic, can pull up, shoot threes, efficient. That's a big thing.
Well, knowing Michael Jordan's competitiveness, Jalen, I'm going to ask you this. Does he say that because he doesn't want to fix his lips and say the words LeBron James? That's what it seems like to me.
He understands that LeBron's wearing 23. He's doing the powder toss. He's following in my footsteps. But at the same time, when people ask him about challenging who's the best, he kind of denying it. So I'm going to deny him every chance I get. I felt like he did that against Kobe for a while, too. And then he realized that for whatever reasons, it wasn't going to take place like that.
But it was interesting. He was one of Kobe's mentors. And he spent a lot of time with Kobe. I think he started to really like Kobe when he realized nobody was talking about Kobe as
correct.
Right. So, obviously we're going to cover the Larry and Magic and some of the beginnings of the league and all of that. But it's the little stories that I love so much. And there's one that really stuck out to me about Calvin Murphy, Houston Rockets great. And you know exactly what I'm talking about, Jackie.
So it turns out Calvin Murphy was, if there is such a thing, a champion baton twirler. Seriously, a champion baton twirler. And went all over the country.
Not the most masculine of hobbies.
No, but very important to Calvin Murphy. Like, very important. He was going to do half times of games up in Buffalo. I mean, he went to Niagara, as you guys know. This was, next to basketball, probably his biggest passion, right?
It was, and he, in his interviews, he actually talks about how being a baton twirler made him tougher, because one of the other things of Calvin Murphy's legacy is, as a little man, he says he was undefeated in NBA fights during his day.
Oh, I like it.
And he's a tough player.
I mean, they say Al Addles and Calvin Murphy are the two toughest little men who may have ever, at least in terms of fisticuffs.
That's hand-eye, right? That's hand-eye coordination. That's dexterity. Those are basketball skills.
I am absolutely impressed by that. Absolutely impressed by that.
My sister was a baton twirler. I slept through many a competition when I was a kid. I can tell you, none of them were like Calvin Murphy.
Correct. And you have extensive knowledge of everything that has taken place in the league, but you have the ultimate pulse on the Boston Celtics. And in this book, you guys talk about a story where Red Auerbach is helping John Havlicek with his conditioning.
Oh, yeah. So here's the funny thing about the Celtics. Satch Sanders shows up, and he's like, man, these guys can run up and down all day. I better get in good shape. And then the first game, they go in at halftime, and they're all smoking. Like chain smoking, right? And he's like, what's this about? And Havlicek is the only one that isn't smoking. So Satch is like, I guess I better start smoking. So Heinsohn was a chain smoker. And so Red says to him, hey, Tommy, you got to quit smoking, man. You're too winded in the games. I need you to quit smoking. So Tommy quits smoking, gains 25 pounds because he starts eating. And then Red's like, Tommy, Forget what I said. Quit eating and start smoking again.
And they say that Satch said that they used to sit next, they'd move up the bench next to Red whenever Heinsohn was in the game because they knew he was going to get mad that when Heinsohn starts blowing wind, and they're like, all right, Satch, get in there.
So whoever was sitting next to Red, he would just grab him and he'd go in the game.
And meanwhile, Red's smoking the whole time during the game as well.
Yeah,
we want to talk Magic and Larry. There is a large part of the book that is dedicated to that saga, that part of the history of the NBA and how it sort of, built everything up. So, Rafe, where do you want to start?
Where I think we got to start with Jackie McMullen. She wrote another entire book about Magic and Larry.
You do, and true story, my mother bought me that book. I got it signed by my coach, Larry Bird, and I got it signed by my childhood idol, Magic Johnson. So thank you very much.
Well, it's very much my pleasure. So the interesting thing to me in this book was the HIV stuff. So Magic finds out he's HIV positive. Lon Rosen calls Larry to let him know because he doesn't want him to be blindsided. And Larry says in the book, it's the first time in his life he didn't feel like playing basketball because everybody thought Irvin was going to die. I mean, everybody, except for Isaiah Thomas. We had this discussion last night at our panel because Isaiah had a brother who was HIV positive. And I remember him pulling me aside like 2 weeks after that and saying, it's all right. It's going to be okay. I'm like, no, everyone says he's going to die. And he's like, no, my brother's been HIV positive for 5 years. But for Bird, that was finally the moment he let his guard down, like completely, and said, you're my friend. What can I do? I'll do anything. Just let me know how I can help.
Wow.
Yeah.
And there's also a story of Larry's work ethic and sort of some of the post-championship celebrations that you see today weren't exactly the same for the Celtics and Larry Bird.
I mean, Quinn Buckner tells the story of visiting Larry's house to the day after winning
in French Lick.
I guess. Boston, right? He's not going all the way back to Indiana yet. He's in Brooklyn. Brookline.
Brookline. We're in Boston now. Pay attention, Ray.
So Quinn Buckner shows up, and he's still high off the night before. They just won the '84 championship, and he goes in there. He sees and he finds Larry's wife. Right? Where's Larry? Where's Larry? Well, he's out running again, getting ready for the next year.
Right. And then the other one, '86. They win. Now Bill Walton's on that team, and it's like the greatest year of his basketball life, or so he says. I wonder if he's forgotten '77.
Yes, he forgot about Portland.
Well, let's go with it. Right? And he and Larry are really close, so he goes up. Shows up at the same house in Brookline, and goes. Says, "Hey, let's celebrate." And Larry's like, "Yeah, man, I'm really tired. I'm going to bed." And Bill's like, "Okay, well, I'll be here in the morning when you wake up." And Larry's like, "Okay, whatever." And he sat there at Larry's table with a bottle of whiskey or some kind of spirits. And when Larry got up the next morning, Bill Walton was still sitting at his table waiting.
Still there. Let me ask you, Jackie, because you covered Larry and the Celtics throughout that whole time, and there's also the stories about how the Celtics liked it when they traded his drinking buddies because he went out. He liked to have too many beers sometimes.
Right. Well, that's why they traded Rick Roby.
Right.
Yeah. So I think this is just in '86 he's older and he's wiser and it's his it's his third championship. He's won his third championship at that point. He's just tired, man. Believe me, in '81. Larry Bird wasn't going to bed or he wasn't running. In fact, and this is urban legend, and I'm not saying it's fact, that he missed, going to see the president. And there are stories that perhaps, or a parade, or he missed something, and there was talk that perhaps he was still celebrating.
Good for him.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's like the Washington Capitals. Have you ever seen anything like that in your life? My goodness.
For the young fans of the game, can you explain to them why the Magic and Larry era is considered the golden era in NBA history?
Well, so in Magic's rookie year, 1980, they win the championship. He plays all 5 positions, and the game is on tape delay. It's kind of hard to imagine this. You had to get up at 11:30 at night to watch that game. It was not live. And so David Stern comes in at this time, too. He becomes commissioner, I think, in 1984, actually. But he's already in the league. So the combination of Stern's vision for promoting players more than teams. So it became Larry Bird and the Celtics and Magic Johnson and the Lakers. And you got they did a beautiful job of the lunch pail guys, the blue collar Boston rugged guys, which is the way Larry played, and then the Showtime glitzy Lakers the way. So you had East Coast, West Coast, the 2 most storied franchises in the history of the sport, right? It was just a made for TV movie, except for it was actually playing out in real time in front of us.
And these guys actually lived up to the hype.
They did.
Okay,
and they didn't like each other.
Correct.
They
were true rivals. They played against each other in the collegiate Final Four.
They did.
And then Magic wins a championship as a rookie.
And Bird's mad. He's watching.
He's upset about it.
Upset.
No question about it. And then they face each other in the finals multiple times during the 80s.
Right.
So, Rafe, you've already told me this story, and I've read it, but the evening of the Malice in the Palace, you mentioned David Stern. Tell us exactly where his head was at and what he was doing.
So this blew my mind, and it's actually not in the book, and it may not even be in the film, but it is in the transcript.
But it's on Jalen and Jacoby.
David Stern says that it's November 2004. He's watching the game. His wife is upstairs in the library watching what he called better fare, something a little more respectable. And then he says, I'm down in the kitchen. I imagine him in like a bathrobe. I'm down in the kitchen fixing myself a little peanut butter and jelly on an English muffin.
Late night snack, some milk.
And then boom, Ben Wallace throws Ron Artest in the neck, and then the beer cup gets thrown, and good Lord, the rest goes.
That's amazing. Imagine if you're David Stern and you're watching that. Like, just imagine what goes through your head when you are watching that.
Drop the English muffin and just
call
Russ Granick.
Within minutes, they all called each other like, "Oh my God!" They all knew within minutes, like this is. I mean, it destroyed the Indiana Pacers.
It did. It did. They were a contending championship level team.
I really think they were going to win that.
They had a squad.
And it didn't just destroy them for that year. It destroyed them for the next 6-7 years.
And for a minute, it destroyed the fan base's belief in the kind of team that they were putting out on the floor, and it set them back a few years to try to rebuild the team.
Yeah.
One thing I love about the book and the film is it's not just focused on NBA basketball and men's basketball. There's a lot of women's basketball that's covered as well. And one thing I want to ask you about, Jackie, is the story of Cheryl Miller and her contribution not just to the book but to the game.
Yeah, so I maintain, had she stayed healthy, there'd be no argument that Cheryl Miller was the greatest player who ever played the game.
Agreed.
I've told brother Reggie that as well. But she did have a serious knee injury, so that's why you don't hear about her as much. One of my favorite stories in the book is she's playing with USC, and they're playing Tennessee for the national championship. And she decides, you know what, if we win, I'm going to do a cartwheel. I'm going to do a cartwheel at the end of the game. And so she does. And then she's got to play for Pat Summitt on the Olympic team. And Pat Summitt is like not too cool with that cartwheel or some of the other things that are going on. And so during one of the games, it's exhibition. It's not the actual Olympic games. She gets mad and she throws a ball up or something. And it's halftime. They go in and Pat Summitt lays the whole team out. And Cheryl's waiting to get yelled at and goes right by her. And she's like, wow, this is amazing. So they start to go out for the second half. She goes, where do you think you're going, Missy? And she said, well, I'm going out to play. She goes, no, you're not. You happen to think you're better than everybody else. You happen to think that you can do whatever you want. Why don't you sit in here and watch the rest of the game?
Really?
So she's like, whoa. So they meet, a couple days later, and Pat Summitt admits, you know what, I'm a little old school. I got to meet you halfway, but you got to show respect for the game and respect for me. And so they kind of agree, yeah, we're going to do that. And then Cheryl Miller says, so Coach says, we good? She goes, yeah. And she goes, yeah. And by the way, you can't win a gold medal without me. And Pat Summitt goes, I know.
Well, I want to thank Jackie McMullen and Rafe Bartholomew, along with Dan Clores. They're the authors of Basketball
Thanks for bringing our show class and knowledge.
It's excellent.
Thank you for having us.
We always talk about what we dress on this show, right? And I'm still trying to find my thing. Like I got the tie on the logo. I live in New York City now. The weather's different. I'm thinking about dressing it up a little bit. But one thing I'm not a tucked in button up guy because I got a little gut and my belt game isn't right. And I'm also not a big untucked button-up guy either. Because a lot of times when you untuck the button-up, you look like a bell. You know what I mean? Like it's all big and round and fluffy. It looks like a sail. Like if in a strong wind, you could probably lift up in the air and fly away. Well, guess what? Untuck It makes shirts specifically designed to be worn untucked. I have a couple of these shirts. They have some stores. I've gone into the stores. They always fit good. I love them so much. They're not just for guys. They're also for women. They're dope. I have some of these, and they fit perfect when you untuck the shirt. They've solved the issue. If you tuck it in, guess what? Your gut shows, you look a little too preppy, your belt's out, things don't fit right, it doesn't work right. If you untuck a regular shirt, it's too big and billowy. Next thing you know, you sit down, it billows up, it makes your gut look bigger. Untuck It is the perfect button-up shirt to untuck. And here's what's even better. If you use promo code Jacoby the first time you shop at Untuck It, you get 20% off. So you get yourself like 3 or 4 of these shirts, use the promo code Jacoby at untuckit.com. You get 20% off. Untuckit.com, put in the promo code Jacoby, get 20% off. I wear these shirts. They're dope.
Did you know ADT can design and install a smart home just for you? A new smart home at your service, customized for your lifestyle. ADT's automation even unlocks the front door for friends who arrive at your place early for the game while you're still out getting snacks. Now that's what I call game day service. It's all controlled from the ADT app or the sound of your voice and backed by 24/7 protection. Visit ADT.com/smart to learn more about how ADT can help keep your home safe and smart.
This is going to be probably the 10th show in a row where we start the show talking about Jimmy Butler. The Jimmy Butler drama just keeps going and going and going. The latest news is that the Miami Heat are very interested in acquiring the services of young Mr. Jimmy Butler, but Zach Lowe and Woj are reporting that the Timberwolves' asking price is very high. Do you think they will figure out a deal to send Jimmy Butler to Miami, or do you think other teams are still in play?
When the owner comes out for public consumption and say that they want a player moved, take it from somebody that played for almost every team in the NBA, he will be moved. Okay. It's only a matter of time. Now, the owner circumvented the process by giving it a timeline. You should never do that. This is an all-star level player. You want to get maximum return. You got to win by getting Karl Anthony Towns to re-sign once you knew that Jimmy Butler was leaving. So there should have been a level of patience there. The teams that he said initially, Clippers, Knicks, Nets.
That's what Jimmy asked for.
But he doesn't control his destiny.
No.
So therefore, a team like Miami with the championship level pedigree, Pat Riley at the top, Eric Spoelstra, one of the best coaches in the game. They're terrific in player development. They have some bad contracts on their books.
Oh, they do.
And so a team that was terrific defensively, one of the best in the league, really struggles offensively. And it gets Jimmy to Miami, who doesn't want to be there that plays in the NBA
and Pat
away
Riley's
from the games.
Pat Riley's like, look, I understand that this is not one of the teams that Jimmy Butler asked to be traded to, but I feel like once he gets here, he'll love the culture, he'll love the city, and we can keep him. So just off the top of my head, I'm going to name some players that if you are Glenn Taylor and Tom Thibodeau, would you be interested in these players? There's Bam Adebayo, who's, young and exciting, and you've got... you got Tyler Johnson out there, Justice Winslow. You can package some of those together. Like, do you think that will work to trade for Jimmy Butler?
No. Not at all.
What sort of package? Do you think Goran Dragic is involved?
Because here's the thing. I want to go back to this. He does not control his destiny. So if you're Minnesota, you have to if you're a team that's trying to acquire Jimmy Butler, you have to take a page out of Toronto Raptors book and hope that Kawhi Leonard stays. Take a page out of the Oklahoma City Thunder book, hope Paul George stays, which he eventually did. And great players don't want to move around all of the time. They definitely don't want to play for 3 or 4 teams in 3 or 4 years. And so you bring him in and allow him to be the leader and think that's going to be the catalyst to allow him to stay.
But it's one of those things, like I've been saying through this saga, like there's no obvious trade partner. Like there's no obvious package. If you look up and down the Heat's roster, and one of the things I loved about this report is like they're looking for established veterans, young players, and assets, which basically means draft picks. It's like, well, that's everything. But like you look at Olynyk, is Olynyk going to be involved? Like, do you get who Josh Richardson is a player that I personally really love? Like any combination of these players, but you're going to end up getting sort of 3 quarters, but you're trading away $1.
Oh, based on the way the season ended last year with Hassan Whiteside, they'd love to do that.
No one wants Whiteside.
But they have Karl Anthony Towns.
Yeah.
And so this is going to continue to play itself out. And I hope that it creates another dynamic duo in the game. Like, if I'm Toronto, I'm trying to do whatever I can to make this deal happen. I would love to play the season with Kawhi Leonard and Jimmy Butler in the East, where we were the #1 seed last year.
It's so interesting you say Toronto, because when I think about Toronto, it's like what you're doing, whoever brings on Jimmy Butler, you're basically auditioning for him to stay. And likewise, you have to make sure it's a match, because he, at the end of the season, can just leave. That's the same position with Kawhi Leonard. So if you're Toronto, and you have both of these players that could both just walk, it's just really interesting. You're basically just pushing all the chips in the middle of the table and saying, they're going to love Toronto, they're going to love this team, we're going to win together, and they're both going to stay.
You know, one of the things that's head-scratching for me is that 50% of the NBA teams have never won a championship. And most of them never go for it, truly, because it's usually safer for the GM to play the long game versus the short game.
Of course.
Not only with the coach, but with the roster. And I've said this multiple times. If I have an all-star player that's a perennial, definitely if I have an all-NBA player, take a list. It could be Giannis. It could be anybody.
Sure.
I'm trying to acquire Jimmy Butler because greatness continues to foster itself with each other. And before you know it, they feel like they can build something special like we see in OKC, like you see in Houston.
I would love to see him in Toronto. And something tells me this won't be the last time that we have an update on Jimmy Butler's status.
Now, here's the one thing about Miami.
Oh, okay. Okay, I'm listening.
And this is where I get a little silly, but it was true. He's had an interesting last couple of years, Jimmy Butler. Okay, the situation in Chicago ended unceremoniously.
Yes.
Now the situation in Minnesota
This is not
is also doing the same. There were some allegations of him and Carl Anthony Towns.
Don't say that. That's not true. That's not true.
Key word I said is
That's not
allegations.
true. That's not true.
Allow me to finish.
Okay. I'd rather
These
not,
are these are still things that are attached to your name that as a person,
True or not.
a public figure, you want to shake. Okay? Now we go to Miami. One thing that ain't an allegation, we saw him commenting on Gabrielle Union's page.
Oh, we're going there.
We saw Dwayne Wade's response. And not that it's going to be a fracture in their relationship, and not that the Carl Anthony Towns thing happened. What I'm just saying is when you sit in front of a microphone and you do a press conference, these are the type of things that are going to become conversation pieces.
Yeah, I mean, it is one of those things. Like, I believe both the things that you mentioned. I don't think the Carl Anthony Towns thing ever happened. I believe he commented on Gabrielle Union's Instagram page, but in a nice way. I'm sure if him and Dwayne Wade saw each other, it's not a problem. I'm sure they give each other a pound and a hug. Yeah. But as you mentioned, for people like us, if you're standing in front of a podium and we can ask questions, a lot of questions about that comment on that Instagram page will be asked.
I know you know me, especially if you got a blue check. Don't be thirst trapping on my wife's page.
We're going to move on. You've made some news recently with your prediction that Anthony Davis is going to spend his last year, even though he's on contract for 3 more years and option after 2. This will be his last year in New Orleans.
Yes, sir.
Well, Anthony Davis had made some news himself. Let's listen to how he feels about his status in the league.
In my eyes, I'm the best player in the game, and I really feel that way, and nobody can tell me different.
In my eyes, I'm the best player in the game. Now, there's 2 ways to read this, right? For me, it's like, okay, he's confident. What else is he supposed to say? There's better players than me out there. He is one of the best players in the league. But there's another side to this where clearly LeBron James is the best player in the league. Clearly. Why do you think he is saying that?
Because he's in the conversation.
He's in the conversation.
But also, being one of the best players in the league, there's levels to this. And the guys that I personally rank in front of him based on this criteria. Now, if I'm drafting a team, of course. For this year, you want LeBron. You want KD.
If you want to win one game, Game 7 tonight, there are a couple players I'd put ahead of him.
But one of the things that players like me, who are fortunate enough to have a long NBA career but never seen superstardom, is that you got to make the people around you better. And so what that means is achieving what LeBron's able to achieve.
Yes.
3 championships with his 4 MVPs. Achieving what KD's able to achieve with the Warriors now. He went to become their best player on the best team and won 2 championships and 2 finals MVPs.
Yep.
I've seen James Harden be top 3 in the league in points and assists and lead the Houston Rockets.
Not the best defender, but sure.
Or without Chris Paul. I've seen Russell Westbrook elevate his team. So that's the conversation for Anthony Davis, which is going to be unique this year for them because they played terrific without Boogie last year. They swept through the Portland Trailblazers, but I don't think this season is going to be that joyride that you saw late.
When they did the media day pictures, like one of the pictures was Anthony Davis, Drew Holiday, Julius Randle, and Mirotic. And I was like, maybe this is his last year in New Orleans.
Correct.
It's time for News That Matters. Jalen Rose, we have an important update. A world record has been broken. A man named Nick in Wales has driven a shed 101.5 miles an hour. Let's take a look at the fastest shed of all time. Jalen, how impressed are you by this shed?
This is definitely cultural, number one.
Okay, I don't know what you mean by that.
Yes, you do. Number two, I don't know what type of vehicle you turn into a shed, but I know I don't want to be in it going 100 miles per hour because that could be fatal.
So you know I like to go negative on everything. So I have some skepticism about this. That looks like a pickup truck that someone just kind of put a shed on top of, not like a shed that someone put wheels under.
Gotcha.
And also, when I saw that it was the fastest shed in the world, I thought it went faster than 101 miles an hour. I've gone faster than 101 miles an hour on the highway.
Well, something sneaky that people may not know about me. Not really a fast driver.
Also,
I'm not
Jalen
that
Rose,
100 miles an hour type of dude.
something people don't know about Jalen Rose. Not a fast bowler. If you bowl with Jalen Rose, he's a finesse bowler. He walks up to the lane and just kind of drops the ball and just pushes it just really lightly, but he bowls well. But like you think like this dude is like 6'10" or whatever, and he would be throwing the ball down there, power bowling. Nope.
So here's what it is. On the first one, if I don't get a strike,
Which
you know,
happens every time.
it's like a rock. It's like a power ball, like left, throw it over the third arrow, try to hit the left side of the front pin. And then the second one is when I have to use touch. So therefore, I don't have a mid-range game. So that's why I have to drop.
Great piece
a lot of things to roll.
But let's be honest, bowling isn't about scoring points. It's about the beverages.
Yes, indeed.
So Jalen Rose, Kevin Durant, he is in everybody's top 5. Like pretty much everybody's top 5 currently, Kevin Durant is involved. Yet he still feels like there is one part of his game that is undervalued, and he feels a little bit disrespected about it. Let's listen to KD.
I mean, it's just pure hate for me, obviously, and no appreciation for my real skill. For
Jalen Rose, he wants to win Defensive Player of the Year, wants to be considered, feels like he's one of the best defensive players in the game. Does he have a legitimate point, or is he just the hero of his own movie, as I like to say?
He's grown as a defender. He's
Absolutely.
putting effort in on that end of the floor. A lot of people don't realize that when KD was in college, he actually led the nation in points and rebounds. And usually a possession isn't over until you steal the ball, get a block, and or get the rebound. Mm-hmm. And so that's a part of it also. So playing alongside Draymond Green, they're able to do a lot of switching. More of the bulky guys, Draymond is able to guard them on the post.
Protecting too.
Correct. But when Draymond is guarding those guys on the post, now he can come weak side and do a lot of contests with his length.
Yeah.
And so it kind of works really well. He does do a really good job of now trying to get into a defensive stance and pick and roll situations, especially out on the floor, regardless of who he's playing against.
We cannot forget the finals when he not only scored what he scored on the offensive end, but guarded LeBron James on the defensive end. He is someone that's very difficult to score against, but let's be honest, is he one of the best 4 or 5 defenders in the league?
Not one of the best 4 or 5. Not in that conversation, but has validated himself as a team defender on a great defensive team.
But you know what? I've noticed something. Paying close attention to the NBA the way I do, the Defensive Player of the Year is kind of like you kind of campaign for that. Don't you kind of have to talk about it a little bit before you get it? Like, it feels like, especially recently, you know, we've seen players kind of like inject themselves into the conversation, into consideration, because not like the MVP, not even pays close attention to what you do in the defensive.
Not true. Kawhi Leonard didn't campaign.
Well, he doesn't really talk.
Boom.
He doesn't really talk.
He laughs.
Yeah, kinda. He craps. He cry laughs.
Well, but it's usually the same guys because it's that effort that they're going to constantly bring. And I know trying to name people, I'm going to forget somebody, but there are teams that play great defense. Like the Celtics play great defense.
Team defense, yes.
Period. But then you're going to have guys like Joel Embiid that's going to be in the conversation.
Yep.
Draymond Green, Rudy Gobert, Anthony
Patrick
Davis,
Beverly, and Tony Allen.
The guy that gets overlooked in this race for Defensive Player of the Year, I'm gonna name him.
Kevin Durant would say Kevin Durant.
Chris Paul.
Oh, I like that. You do not want Chris Paul guarding you. It just seems annoying. I just don't want him around me.
He's a guy that can guard your point guard.
Works the reps.
I remember being in the building. He was guarding Kevin Durant. He'll steal the ball from you. He doesn't do a lot of gambling. And so that's a guy, I think, that never gets the props that he deserves. And Giannis is going to be in the conversation, too.
That's a great point. Someone asked Luke Walton about the pressure that comes with LeBron James and the added expectations. And he had a great response. He said, quote, "You've got to remember, I played with Kobe and Shaq. I grew up in a household where Larry Bird was coming over in the summertime. It's more excitement of having the opportunity as opposed to feeling any nerves or pressure of having someone of his caliber." I absolutely love that response. Do you believe it 100%?
I believe it. He's built for this. The one thing, though, so here's the dynamics that the Lakers have to watch this year. So you got LeBron and their young core three, and Kuz and Ingram and Ball. People that we don't talk about that's going to play quality minutes like Kentavious Caldwell-Pope.
Good point.
And then you got the guys that are considered, in this case, expendables because they're under 1 year.
My guys.
Contracts.
My guys.
Beasley, JaVale, Rondo, and
Lance.
And so this could go either way. Remember, in the West last year, seed number 3 to seed number 9 was only separated by 3 games, which means if you get off to a poor start in the Western Conference, that those teams have now gotten better. Well, Denver's gotten better.
Magic has already come out and said, look, if they get off to a poor start, don't worry about it. He's like, Luke is not under pressure. Because if you think about coaches that coach LeBron James, remember Spoelstra? Do you remember how it started in Miami? It didn't start great. People were talking about Spoelstra's going to go. Remember they bumped into Spoelstra on the way out? David Blatt. Oh, Shane, what happened to David Blatt?
It's a difference.
Shane, what happened to David Blatt?
It is a shame.
Yeah, and then Luke Walton. It does seem like when LeBron has a new coach, whether it's media created or whether it comes from inside, it seems like they're on the hot seat.
Here's the dynamic to pay attention to when that takes place.
Okay.
For Luke Walton, he wasn't hired by Magic Johnson and Rob Pelinka.
He was inherited.
For Eric Spoelstra, he was hired by Pat Riley. And the last time I checked, Pat Riley and Spoelstra were there when LeBron and Wade were gone.
Yep, and also David Blatt wasn't hired to coach LeBron James.
Correct.
LeBron James came after David Blatt was already established.
So this dynamic is really different. And I'm going to be a guy that says I'm expecting the Lakers to be a 6 or 7 seed, depending on a matchup, possibly advance.
It's a dangerous first round for whoever gets it.
But with an injury and with some bad play, this could go the other way too.
Oh, I could. For a squad with an injury, of course. You can always say with an injury, but this team, healthy, is going to be in the playoffs.
But here's something I'm going to point out to you.
Please do, Mr.
You're going to be watching the Lakers play basketball, and they have to decide, because I don't know if they're going to be able to put their best 5 players on the floor to close games.
Here's what I think is going to happen. I don't think this is going to be the roster after the trade deadline.
It's not going to be.
They're going to have some shooters. They're going to change the roster.
So let me go deeper into the box score. Mo Wagner's a rookie from Michigan. I think he's going to have a long career. He's going to be a really good stretch 5. He can play.
He's going to be there.
You're going to watch them play this year and be like, oh, he can ball. You're going to see JaVale McGee catch lobs, run the floor, whatever. But neither one of those guys, to me, are 32 to 35 minute per game players.
Especially when you don't need a center on the floor.
So now, when it's 4 minutes to go in the game, who's the biggest guy the Lakers have on the floor?
Got to have Lance in there. Probably LeBron, to be honest with you.
Correct.
It's probably LeBron.
Now,
I can call Ingram bigger than LeBron.
But here's the difference. This ain't the East. So LeBron can be the quote-unquote biggest guy on the floor and kind of play some 4 or 5. But in the West, teams like Houston have a Capella. Teams like Boston have a Horford. So when you're going against the best teams, the Golden State Warriors got Boogie and KD.
Boogie
6'11".
looks like he's going to be back, too. Like, I thought Boogie was going to be gone until Christmas or something. Like, he looks healthy.
When you look at the teams in the West, most of those teams have really good big men that we never talk about.
My man Steven Adams. Don't sleep on my man Steven Adams, one of my favorite players in the NBA.
Jokic in Denver. Nurkic in Portland.
Center.
These are actual centers.
Talk about small ball. Everyone's talking about small ball, small ball, small 5, small 5. Like, there are really good centers.
I was on the phone with an archaeologist, and I wanted to make sure I did what I could to help bring the center position back.
Well, thank you so much.
Everybody talks about the point guards.
On behalf of NBA fans, I really appreciate it.
The big man is back in the league.
James Harrison, former teammate of Le'Veon Bell, was on FS1 and he had this to say.
Debo.
I think the play for Le'Veon, if I'm Le'Veon, is I'm coming back, November 13th?
Yeah, the 10th game.
And I'm going to go in there. I'm going to get my credit the season that I need to get, and I'm going to do the best I can to get out of that season healthy. And for me, I'd give you everything in practice. You would see, the cameras would see that I am fine, I am healthy. But come Saturday, something ain't right. I can't play.
Jalen, this sounds like something you would do. This sounds like a strategy that you would support. Do you support this strategy?
I actually support the strategy that Le'Veon is currently doing versus
partying in Miami.
What Debo just said. Here's why. Because it's one thing for you to be away from the team and not playing on Sunday versus you're practicing all week, you're in the locker room with your teammates.
Your teammates can
Once
sniff it
you
out.
come back, the anticipation is that you're going to help us win the next game.
$832,000.
And so for that dynamic to continue to fracture a locker room where uniquely you've already seen players come out and talk about his holdout situation, I don't think that would play well with the squad. And also, I think that may turn off a couple of potential suitors.
I think that makes sense.
Because now they may see you as a guy that can wreck a locker room, wreck a team. I think as he continues to sit out and the ticket continues to shrink of what it would cost to acquire him, that puts him in better position to actually be traded.
Jalen Rose, I want to finish the show with this. The greatest highlight you've ever seen in your whole entire life.
I'm in it.
Check out this ultimate Frisbee highlight. I know you are an ultimate Frisbee aficionado. This catch jumping out of bounds and then throws it right on stride to my man in the end zone.
Stride.
Jalen Rose, is that the most impressive athletic achievement you've ever seen in your whole entire life?
Well, not all that, but
it's definitely that.
It's a terrific, wonderful, fantastic
It's definitely
achievement.
that.
And by the way, played a lot of Frisbee growing up.
You did?
No question.
Oh, did you ever play ultimate Frisbee?
The free game in the hood.
You have no idea
A lot
what
of
you're
running.
talking about. Here's the thing. We want to give away T-shirts, Jalen.
Okay, great. I'm excited.
You've always been like, we need to give away T-shirts, we need to give away T-shirts.
And hoodies.
And we always say we give the people what they want. And we love involving our listeners in the things that we do, taking them behind the curtain. Well, we're putting all of that together because with Creative Allies, we partnered up with them. We are going to have the listeners of our podcast design the T-shirt that we end up producing and giving out to the fans. So if you go to jalen.creativeallies.com, jalen.creativeallies.com. If you can't spell Creative Allies, then you're probably not going to be good enough to design a dope T-shirt.
Not true. That is not true. I must stop you in your tracks.
I'm a bad speller, too. I'm a
really
bad speller.
There's some really creative
The crew knows how bad I can
that probably didn't necessarily get the quality education or not the best at spelling. But we want them to be able to draw. We want them to be able to
design.
create.
To design.
Win a spelling bee.
So go to jalen.creativeallies.com, submit your design for a T-shirt. We'll pick a winner, and then everybody gets T-shirts. This is one of the things I said. I was like, look, dope. I said, we've promised some T-shirts before, but I don't think we sent out too many. And Harlan was like, I sent out 100 T-shirts. And I was like, I'll take the under on that.
And then
I'll take the under on that.
And then you know what happened, right?
I didn't get too many tweets being like, thank you so much for sending the T-shirt, Jacoby.
I was just in L.A.
Got like 3 of those.
Walked Harlan to the car. 100 shirts in his
car. He's selling them out the trunk. It's truly a Pop the Trunk production. It's truly a Pop the Trunk production.
All of those shirts in his trunk.
We always say Pop the Trunk.
I just seen them the other day.
People ask us, like, what does Pop the Trunk mean? Do you mean like someone gets in a fight? They're probably like, no. We mean kind of like in Goodfellas, when they pop the trunk and sell things out the trunk. You know it's a Pop the Trunk production when your own producer is selling T-shirts out of the back of his trunk. So listen, we're not trying to sell T-shirts. We're not going to let Harlan hoard the T-shirts. This is a real thing. Go to jalen.creativeallies.com. Submit your design. We're going to pick a design. You have to do it now, though, because you have until September 30th to get that done. Please call up 98580-JALEN with your regional or cultural questions. We'll be doing a full segment of regional or cultural tomorrow on the show. Once again,
thank you to the crew that's allowing us in the studio right now, taking their time and energy. We appreciate the love.
We'll be back tomorrow. Right, Reg?
We're not done. We're not done. Got to give the people time. Give people what they want.
They my little guys. I love them.
Speaking of the Hobbits, let's talk about LeBron James for a second.